So yeah, today I'm going to present a little bit about XCUITest. And yeah, before I forget, feel free to drop any questions in the chat, or yeah, just turn on the mic and interrupt me if you want. It's supposed to be interactive. So yeah, just if you have any questions, just shoot them. And yeah, let's begin. So introduction to XCUITest. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me. I have been working with automation testing for the past 6 years, sort of, and 3.5 years were in mobile. The past 2.5 years, I have been working at BNZ in the digital space and mostly in mobile. For the past year, I joined the iOS platform team. And the reason for that was to focus a little bit more on the platform, because BNZ has a lot of features, but once you create lots of features and you forget about the platform, then it gets harder and harder to create more features, because there's a lot of tech debt being created as well. Fun fact about me, I founded the Wellington Testers Meetup and this Mobile Automation Test Meetup as well. So this is a new one. The idea with this one is to very focus on who wants to learn more or do stuff around mobile. So yeah, happy to see you guys here today. And yeah, fun fact about me as well. You can talk to me about Rocket League. It really grew on me during the lockdown period, and I do play FIFA as well. But yeah, if you want to talk about me about any other game, I'll be happy to. Cool. Well, that's enough about me. So what we're gonna see today. Today we're gonna be seeing a little bit of Apple's UI testing framework, XCUITest. And after I talk about it, we'll try and create the first XCUITest, see what Xcode looks like, some ways of finding elements and stuff like that. Cool. So in order to create UI tests for native iOS apps, you are going to need a MacBook computer running the latest version of Xcode. So Xcode includes already the iOS SDK, tools, compilers, and frameworks, and we can use that to write UI tests as well and debug the iOS app. So yeah, for native mobile app development on iOS, we have the use of Swift, the Swift programming language, and the Swift is also the language we use to write UI tests. Basically, yeah, I just wanted to stress that it is important to note that Xcode only runs on Mac OS, and if you want to use Xcode, you have to be on a Mac. Cool. So what is Swift? So Swift was launched by Apple in 2014 to replace Objective-C. So yeah, Swift is a new language, as you can see, and it's quite fast. It's type safe, and most importantly, it's easy to learn, and it has lots of resources to learn from online. And that's also the language we use to create UI tests. So, but what is XCUITest? XCUITest is basically, and yeah, let me know if I'm going too fast. Sometimes I do that. And yeah, interrupt me if you guys have any questions. So XCUITest. XCUITest is a UI testing framework. It was launched by Apple in 2015, so a little bit after Swift. And with XCUITest, we can basically create automated tests for iOS apps using Swift, which is pretty cool. Yeah. The thing is with XCUITest, the only thing is that we can only create tests for native apps that are written in Swift or Objective-C. which means we cannot use XCUITest to test cross-platform apps like React Native or Flutter, for example. So why XCUITest? So if it has these limitations, why is it good? So I see a lot of people talking about Appium all the time. So I'll try to explain why I reckon XCUITest is the best one to use. So there's no additional components required to be installed. So it's already pre-built into Xcode. So basically, if you have Xcode, you don't need to install anything else or download anything else. It's already there. It has native language support. So if you use XCUITest to automate your iOS apps or other platform Apple apps, you might be using Swift, which is, it's basically the same language the developers are using. And that takes me to the next one, the collaboration with the developers. So if you think of it, it's a pretty big advantage since there's no learning curve or language barrier between iOS developers and automation engineers. They both could support, review, extend each other's test scripts and collaborate on creating new ones. And that's been exactly my experience at BNZ. I did use Appium in the past, but in my case, I was the only tester in the company, which I think happens quite often. And I was working with Ruby. So basically it was the different language from the developers. And the developers and the devs couldn't really help me. And that meant that there was no collaboration, right? If they didn't know the language, they weren't really able to help me much. So basically it would take me like longer to create anything, since I was basically like learning by myself and with no help. So that's pretty good advantage in my opinion. The speed, so yeah, there's no secret that all the other iOS UI test frameworks available on the market are based on XCUITest. So it means if you think about it, when you add an extra layer of complexity, it will work slower than if you didn't have that extra layer, right? So finding elements, extracting attributes, typing text, everything is going to be a bit faster in XCUITest. There's also easy CI integration. So Xcode allows to execute tests via command line, and this is really well used by all major CI systems like Jenkins. So yeah, we can set up to run on CI, and that's easy to do as well. One cool thing about XCUITest is the accessibility. So how does XCUITest and accessibility relate? Yeah, well, basically XCUITest hook into the accessibility elements of the app in order to read values, trigger actions, and like for example, check existence of things. So if an element is not visible to the accessibility hierarchy, it won't be visible to the UI test as well. So when you write UI tests, you unintentionally improve the accessibility of the app. Cool, I think that's it. But what are the downsides of XCUITest? So there are a few downsides to XCUITest. You can't really write tests for multiple platforms. Like you can't have a test which is testing both iOS and Android apps within the same test, for example. That's something that Appium does. And another thing is, if you want to use XCUITest, you might have to use, you have to use Swift, right? You can't really use a language of your choice like Java, Ruby, or Python, So you have to use Swift. But as I mentioned before, I reckon Swift is pretty cool to learn and to use. So it's not really a downside for me. So I keep talking about XCUITest, but if you look into the Xcode, as I'm going to show you afterwards, you won't really see XCUITests there. You basically see XCTest, and there's just I just want to explain a little bit what XCTest is, and then talk about the difference between these two. So XCTest is more like the general testing framework for Xcode, and it's used for unit testing, integration and network testing, and performance testing as well. So yeah, it's more like lower level testing kind of thing. So what are the differences between XCTest and XCUITest? So if you try to search for XCUITest on the internet, there's a good chance you might not find it right away. The reason for this is that XCUITest is a part of the XCTest framework, just like I said before. And however, it's still in the independent module, and that's basically used to test UI, right? User interfaces. So I think the main thing the main difference between these two is that XCUITest is like pure black box. So like once the app is launched, you can't really do anything other than a user could do. So the only thing you can interact with the app is through using the UI, right? So you can tap a button and wait, just like a user would do. And if you, for example, if you're testing an app and you want to change something in the app, you want to have it a little bit different, maybe a different feature flag, or you want it to point to a different environment, you do that by using launching arguments or launch environment. But like it's black box, you can only do that before the test actually starts. So I'm gonna just briefly go through these three. You can read it further afterwards. But what I wanted to say is that the APIs for writing UI tests, basically XCUI tests, are these three. The XCUI application, which is the one that you use to launch the app. XCUI element, which is the one that you use to interact with the app. And XCUI element query, which you use to search for elements on the screen. So I know that's kind of like really high level explanation, but I'm trying to show how these APIs work in a nutshell in the next one. So for example, if in one usual test, you would have to launch the app, you have to find elements on the screen, you have to interact with these elements, and then like tap a button or search for something, and then you would assert that it happened what was expected, right? And then afterwards you would kill the app. So as you can see here, each of these APIs are kind of like responsible for these different things. So once you start actually creating UI tests on Xcode, then it becomes clearer. But I think this kind of like it's a good place to start thinking about the differences, right? Cool. So let's create some UI tests then. So far, do you guys have any questions? Want me to explain anything else further? If you have, just type anything in the chat. Otherwise, we should be good to go. Are you guys being able to read the code on the screen? I'm going to increase it a little bit. Is it good enough? How is it?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, cool. Nice one. So yeah, let me just try and show you the app. So this app, so you guys can see where I grabbed it. I found this repo on GitHub with it's called Swift30 projects. It's also in the end of the presentation, I put several links. You guys can get this one as well. And the one I just grabbed one of these repos, one of these projects, and that's the one I'm using today. Just wanted to show you guys where I grab it from. So this is Xcode. This is what Xcode looks like. I think it's a little bit, oh yeah, just going to put it a little bit here. Cool. So one of the advantages of using XCUITest and being on the same IDE as the developer is that basically this is the app, right? These are not the tests. This is the actual app, and you are on the same space. The developers and the testers are on the same space, and you guys use the same repo. So that's quite good to nice and easy to work together and collaborate. So if you want to run the app, so that's what I'm going to do first. So you guys can see what we're going to do with the app today. So you just tap here, and this runs the app. It's going to run on an iPhone 11. So this is the simulator. Candy search.
Fabio, are you showing the app code, or is it the test code, the one that you are currently showing?
So this one is the app code. That's
okay. Yeah.
Good question.
Okay.
The test code is here. I'm just going to show
All
you
right. Yeah.
afterwards.
Okay. Cool. Sorry.
No, that's good. Good question. And that's it, right? We're basically looking the app code, and we can just come here and create the test code as well. They're all separate, but on the same place. Cool.
Thanks, Fabio.
Oh, good. Yeah. So this is the app. This is like a simple app. It has a list of things. You can tap on these things, and it's going to go to a different page, and you can go back. You can tap on the search bar. You can search for stuff. You can check it's finding what you want. You can check that it's not finding what you want. You can also filter from different types of candies. And yeah, that's pretty simple app, but I think that serves the purpose of what I'm trying to show today. So yeah, let me show the test code now. So here, this is the test code. That's one test that I created. So the goal of this test is to tap on the chocolate bar item, which is this one. So what we want to do is first we make sure we're in the right screen. So I might maybe get a little bit, I don't know, too deep on how we do things in mobile. Don't know if that would be the same for web and stuff, but usually in mobile, I think that's pretty much the same for web. We always, before doing anything, we need to make sure we're on the right screen, right? Because we're often changing screens. So before doing anything, we need to make sure we landed on the right screen, right? So here we are asserting that this candy search logo exists, so which is this logo here. This is just commented code. I'm going to explain a little bit later. And then we tap on the chocolate bar, which is this one. And then that's this. And then we assert it landed on the chocolate page, navigation bar, static texts. So it basically checks that this navigation bar contains the chocolate text, right? And then chocolate bar title exists. So it just checks if this chocolate bar title exists. And then it taps back here again. And then it asserts the same thing as this one. So I know it's a lot to take in, and maybe it doesn't make any sense, but This is one simple test in XCUITest. Let me just run this one to see if it's all good. So yeah, it's building. It's going to, yeah, build succeeded. So it's going to open the test. Tap, check if the logo exists. Tap on the chocolate bar, tap back, and yeah, that's it. Something to keep in mind is that I am using, so I think if I want to explain a little bit how we interact with these things, basically we do, I actually unintentionally hide one thing. So I did hide this bit here. So I, sorry, that was not intentional already, but so first, that's the thing that we're not seeing there in the test. It's launching the app. So first thing, remember how we saw the three APIs? So the first API was XCUI application, right? So that's the application we're going to interact with. So we call, so in Swift, when you want to declare a variable, you do something like this, var, new var, and then, yeah, just maybe it's a string, it's a variable, right? But if you want to declare a constant, you declare it like this. So you should know that your constant is something that's never going to change. You declare it with let. So you let app XCUI application. We're basically saying that XCUI application, every time we call app, we're calling XCUI application. So that's what we did here. We interacted with the API by doing app.launch, which would be the same thing as doing app XCUI application dot launch. Yeah, Xcode does have some autocomplete features that are quite helpful. So by doing this, we're basically doing this. And then every time we use app, we're essentially using XCUI application. So here, for example, we have app.images, candy search logo.exists. So the syntax is something like app dot element. So I'm just trying to explain how like it, and then trying to explain how in general it would work. Let me know if it doesn't make any sense, but that's how I think about it. So it's pretty much like you do app.element and dot interaction. So here, what we did here, we did app, which is this one, and then we did images, candy search logo, which is this one. So this is the element, right? And dot exists, which is the interaction. So we're basically checking if that element exists. And if you look at the other ones, they all kind of like look the same, and they're going to change a little bit from one another. So the element is always going to be found in a little bit different way. So this way is we went through, it's an image, right? So went through images and found the name of the image. But here, for example, it's not an image, right? It's a list. So it's a table. So in this table, so essentially it's the same thing, right? So we did app, which is this one. The element will be tables dot static texts chocolate bar. this is the element, and the interaction we're doing here is tap. So this kind of like a high level way of thinking how to interact with the elements on the iOS app. But yeah. Do you guys have any questions? I might explain a little bit about accessibility identifier.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
when we do the XCUI test, do we always add the test inside the application, like the Candy Search application, or can we like do it like separate from the app and then launch the app from somewhere?
That's a good question. I haven't really done it that way. I would assume, yeah, you can do, because once you have the application, what you need to do is have the IPA, which is the iOS version of kind of like the Android APK. And if you have the UI test and that, then theoretically you should be able to run.
Yep,
Yeah.
I think so too. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, good. Cool. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to show you guys. You remember how I talked about the accessibility? So a good example of how we can improve one test with accessibility is this one. So if you look at this one, it's quite ugly, right? So it's called inline logo element. XCUI application dot navigation bars master dot other elements dot containing dot image dot identifier inline logo dot element. So what is it, right? what is it doing? So when I first ran and found the element, this was the name of the element. So the element didn't really have an accessibility identifier, which also means that, for example, if you have impaired vision and you're running the app and through VoiceOver, when it gets to this element, instead of saying what the element is, it's going to say inline logo, and that's not really helpful. So can anyone guess what this element relates to?
Does it relate to the image and the text inside it?
Yep, that's a nice one. So that's exactly that. So this all of it is the Candy Search logo. I'm just going to show one way of changing the accessibility of that. So since and I think that's one of the good things of being inside already the app code, because imagine if you're not inside the application, you would have to ask someone else to do it, or I mean, if you're not there, you would have to maybe change it in some other place and get two different things together. And yeah, I think it's a bit more complicated. So if you're here, one way of doing is through the storyboard. So here it's the app. I know it might look a bit complicated, but it's okay. And like, as I said before, this is the language that devs use, and it doesn't matter how experienced you are. It's always cool to go and ask for questions. It doesn't matter, right? So you can get helps, and I get help from the developers pretty much every day. So that's cool, and they're happy to help. So here, if you click here, that's the inline logo, which is the one thing we were seeing before. On the right, they have all these tabs here on the top. And here in this one, we have this that contains accessibility. And we can what I did basically was tap enabled, and then I created this accessibility identifier. And I can basically name it to anything I want. I name it to Candy Search logo, and that's how I used it here. And that's looking way better now. So if you just take a look at it, it's way easier to understand if you're taking a look at the test. Oh, we actually have two tests here. So there's just two more things I wanted to show you guys, which is the test report and the test recorder. And I reckon you guys are gonna like the test recorder. So let me just show you guys the test report first. So by the way,
question before, please.
Yeah, sure.
So if you change the identifier where you were changing, will that change on the original code that the developers coded, or just for you?
Yep. So that changes in the developer's code as well. Yeah, which is fine because the accessibility identifier doesn't impact the app.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's always, every time you're touching the code, you have to be extra careful. So yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Yep. So I don't think I mentioned how you run tests. So if you want to run tests, every test is inside a function, and the way of running the test is basically clicking here on this diamond thingy. If we have more than one function in the test class, and as you guys might have seen, every test starts with test, lowercase, and then camel case. And that's just the way it is for convention. And if you want to run all these tests inside one class, you just click here. So hopefully the second test will fail, and then I can show you guys in the report what it looks like. So it's running the first one. Cool, failed. So there's some ways of checking it out. So if it fails and you're already on the test, you can go check the message that pops up. So it says, fail to get matching snapshot, no matches found for elements matching predicate, return in identifiers from input, button label back. It's not super clear. Essentially, what it's saying is that it found return and it was trying to look for back. But Xcode also have this test report thingy here. So if you come here on the last tab and you click here, this shows all the tests that ran. So one cool thing on the test report is that this one passed, so it doesn't have anything cool, but this one failed. So if you look into it, you can see there's an attached screenshot. Just click through and it shows where I failed. So that's hopefully helps a little bit more trying to understand what happened. So it says fail to get matching snapshot. I was trying to look for return, but then it found back, and then you look here, it says back. So hopefully it helps a little bit more. There's also a way of adding messages to the tests if the test fails. But yeah, I can show you guys later. I want to show you how the test recorder looks like, and then we can wrap up. So if you want to write a new test, you can basically look at how it looks like on the top. That's what I do. So func test using recorder, then parentheses, throws, then tap, and then it creates another one already. Cool. It's not building, so just, yeah, it's not helping me. Sometimes it's, so what's happening here is that what I want to use is this red button here, which is the recording button. So essentially what it does is once I tap it, everything I do in the app, it's recorded on the test. And then my job is to basically tidy up and maybe change something, just like I did with this one, with the accessibility identifier. But in theory, you would be able to have like a working test already. So yeah, it's showing up here now. Sometimes it takes a little bit. So yeah, let's do it. Let's see what it looks like. So I just clicking here, record UI test. So this should build the app, and then yeah. So basically everything that I do here is going to reflect in the app. So I'm going to tap here. Yep, it's already updated with the new accessibility identifier, which is cool. I'm going to tap search. I'm going to tap the filters. I'm going to tap cancel. I'm going to tap here. Yeah, sometimes, yeah, this might happen. There's also a couple other ways. So yeah, so basically this way is to, everything that I did is here. So we created a navigation bar. It's created two. Sometimes it does some weird things, but as you guys can see, it went through images, Candy search logo, and then tapped, that's what I did. I went to search fields, search, and tapped, that's what I did. And I went to the buttons, chocolate. Yep, that's what I did, which are these buttons here. So button chocolate, hard, and other, and then button cancel. So yeah, just wanted to show you guys.
I have a question, Fabio, regarding the recorder. Can you assert text using the recorder? Like when you went to the chocolate, hard, and other, would you be able to assert the text there, like how you did in the previous text?
Yep, good question. So remember how the general idea is like app element interaction. What we did here was the tap interaction. So if we were to check if the text exists, we could go and do exists, hopefully. Just show this one. Yep. So if you do dot, then it also shows you what you do next usually. But yeah, essentially, you would do it something like this. You tap, okay. But then you can check if it exists. You just change the interaction.
Sweet, thank you.
Oh, good. Cool. Do you guys have any questions about the code? We will go back to the, just any questions about Xcode or the test, anything will be good.
I have another question regarding what CI integration is compatible with Xcode. You know, when you do the XCUITest.
You mean like Jenkins and stuff?
Yeah, Jenkins and TeamCity. Can we use TeamCity essentially?
Yep.
Cool.
So
okay.
Yeah, because Xcode, you can basically run the test using command line. So
right.
Yeah, once you have command line, you can pretty much use all the
good. Thank you.
CI options. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, let's go back to the slides. Sweet. So yeah, guys, what we have seen today. Yeah, I forgot to mention one thing. So we call it UI test, right? And we call it XCUITest framework. But one thing I didn't mention is that, let me just go back to the app so you guys can know what I'm talking about. So you see how I tapped, I checked if the text exists. So imagine that everything here is broken and everything here is like thrown away, and like chocolate bar is down here, candy search is like down here, search bar is in the middle, you know, everything is crazy. The test essentially would pass still. So despite being called UI test, it doesn't really check UI defects. It just tests the functional part, only catch functional bugs. Only checks if a button takes you to where it should. Only checks, yeah, if a text is there, if it took you to the right screen and stuff like that. Yep. So just wanted to stress that. So yeah. So UI tests only catch functional bugs. So basically only things that nothing visual, unfortunately. It's easy to get started. I mean, if you're already working with iOS products and have access to Xcode, then you don't need anything tricky or hard to get. Everything is already there, right? And why is it important? Well, I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience at BNZ. Well, while UI tests don't fully replace manual testing, but it can help a lot with the heavy lifting, right? So every time there's a new feature that could be breaking existing functionality, you have to test it, right? You have to make sure that nothing is breaking what's already there. And that's where the UI test can help you. It helps you focus on the important stuff, the new stuff. So yeah, Appian said a good example of that is that we used to take like 3 or 4 days with all the testers doing manual regression at BNZ. And that's because we would start the regression and we didn't really have UI tests, right? So the only time we could find out about bugs was during the regression. So we would find bugs and then everyone would have to stop regression. The bug would have to be fixed because we would be usually a major bug, and then everyone would start regression again and so on until the regression was finished. So that would used to take like 3 or 4 days. Tests were like on the last part of the release, and we always find bugs, like always. But that's already too late, right? It's a lot of disruption. Everyone was like pissed off because of that. But yeah, with the UI tests, UI tests started being executed on PRs. So that's kind of like a term we use a lot, like shifting tests left. So finding bugs earlier in the development process. So it gave us like way more confidence when doing a release. So now we allocate like 3 hours of testing, just because people start working later and yeah, stuff like that. But essentially it actually takes like 30 minutes tops to do the full regression of the BNZ app, which is like a massive app. So yeah, it gives a lot more confidence, and that's a big win. That's why I think it's really important.
Fabio, can you share how many tests you run in that 30 minutes, if you may?
Yeah, so you mean, so this test, it takes like around 30 minutes. They're not UI tests, right? So UI tests are around 100, which is a lot, we know, and they usually take around 25 to 30 minutes now to run. But okay. Yeah, I was talking the 30 minutes that takes for the manual regression is like actually manually testing the app.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
But yeah, the 100-ish tests we have run in around 30 minutes. And that also is because we did a lot of work on fixing flaky UI tests. So you know how I showed before the interaction dot exists? this is a good interaction to check if the element exists on the screen, right? But it's not really a good practice when you're running UI tests, because there could be delays in CI, there could be delays when loading the app, and the .exist doesn't have any weight, right? So similar to .exist, there's another one called wait for existence, and that we can set like a default waiting time for that, or you can pick like a random waiting time for that, like 5 seconds, 30 seconds, and if it finds the element in like half a second, it goes through. If it doesn't find, it keeps trying for 30 seconds. So we've done lots of work around that kind of thing, you know, at BNZ. So we basically didn't run the UI tests before because they were flaky and they took a long time. And once we just looked at the UI tests and saw what was wrong with them, like take a closer look, we saw that there was like actually flaky implementation of how the test should run. So once we improved that, the tests improved as well, and we could run them often and get more confidence, basically. Cool. What's next? So what I showed today is kind of like the real basics of XCUITest, but there's a lot of things we can do with it, and there's a lot of things we are doing already at BNZ. So despite it not giving any out-of-the-box solutions for visual regression, there is a framework for snapshot testing, which we are using at BNZ. We're still learning with it, but it gives us the visual comparison pixel by pixel of screens. So that's pretty cool. What to learn as well is design patterns, how to better, like, there's a lot of like, I know different ways of doing it, but if you structure your UI tests well, then you might have a better time adding new ones, fixing the existing ones, and yeah, stuff like that. It's like easy to understand. They shouldn't be, you know, complex and hard to understand. They should be easy, and anyone should be able to jump in and start collaborating. UI test reports. That's really useful, and I'm gonna say, like, just in terms of as a tester in general, as part of our job, we always have to prove why testing is important, and despite showing it a lot, you always have to do it over and over. So ways of doing it is either like showing the UI test reports and getting good reports to better debug what's really happening, if it's a false positive or not. So focus on that, and also metrics. Metrics are good because if you add the metrics in the right places, and that's something we're not doing yet at BNZ, but that's something we're going to do next as well. Trying to find ways of highlighting, like, because highlighting where the UI tests are important, you know, because several times if the UI tests are being executed and everything is fine, everyone's happy, you know, but if they start failing, people start challenging if they're really relevant. So if you have metrics to back you, to show they're relevant, they're important, then it helps you with discussions, and yeah, to convince the key people that will support you on creating UI tests and improving the automation suite. Running UI tests on CI, I think, yeah, that's good, because if you create UI tests, you should be running them. Like, if you don't run UI tests, if you create the UI tests but they don't run, they will either become deprecated easily, or people will just forget about them. So once you create a UI test, the test should be running always, or like in a good pace, you know, like really often. And one last thing is the UI test coverage. That's one thing we've done at BNZ. That's kind of like, I can make a presentation about that maybe later, but it's about trying to highlight, what we are actually testing and what's the coverage and what the UI tests are testing, you know. So yeah, and I know it's a bit, I'm not explaining well, but it's cool. It's cool, and I can make maybe a presentation about that as well. Cool. Yeah. So just wanted to maybe turn on the video for a little bit. Yeah, guys. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and was pretty cool having people interested in the presentation. That's really cool. If you have any questions, I will post the slides for sure on the meetup page, and hopefully I can get the recording as well, and then we can all take a look at it later. And yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to just scan this QR code and send me an invite on LinkedIn. We can, yeah, just ask any questions there. I'm more than happy to help. And yeah, just one last thing before we go. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so on the slides, there's a couple of resources I've used for the presentation. So there's like some XCUITest basics. So we have this course here as well, this test automation Tools Introduction to iOS Test Automation with XCUITest. So that's pretty much mostly where I based this presentation from. And this is kind of like a quick course for XCUITest. And if you want to learn XCUITest, I really highly recommend you taking this course. It takes half a day to do it, so it's pretty easy to do, and you can learn a lot really quickly. So there's the Swift projects, and yeah, yeah, just take a look later and see if there's anything you find interesting. Sweet. I think that's us then, right?
So, sorry, Fabio, just before
Yeah.
you wanted to ask, so you mentioned that there was some flaky tests before.
Yeah.
Did you solve this problem like 100%, or you still have you know, like a grace amount of tests that may be dying from time to time?
Yeah, so yeah, it happens. It still happens, but usually I think it's kind of like the broken mirror syndrome. Don't know if that's the thing, but it's basically like what used to happen with us. We would have like 100 tests and 40 tests would be failing, you know. So you would just assume like, oh, UI tests are flaky, right? They are flaky by nature, and they just don't work, right? So we can do other things to solve this, but yeah, UI tests don't work, right? But that's not true. So we've seen there's a lot of things, right? So there's the how you write tests. That's a good thing. That's just one simple thing that we changed, and it helped a lot already, just the weights. But there's also the infrastructure. If you run the tests against mock servers or real servers, that could be a big difference as well. Yeah, and everything can affect a little bit. We have been having some issues with some kind of like date helpers, but it's just that they were created like 5 or 6 years ago, and from time to time they catch us, you know. So once in a while there's like a failing UI test because some date helper stopped working. But that's the kind of thing like we can do, you know. We can improve that. We can focus on maybe writing a new date helper or improving the existing one, and yeah, that should be able to like help with those things, you know. So I think what I want to say is that if you really focus on making UI tests work and everything, then from time to time you will have some random thing, but it's not going to be really random. It's probably going to be some infrastructure thing. Yeah, that's what happened lately at Binzen. We had like several, like a month or two with no UI, like no flaky UI tests at all. They were all green all the time, you know. And lately, some infrastructure problem happened, and UI tests started failing, and there wasn't really the UI tests code was something else. So we just need to fix them. So yeah, those kind of things.
In the server side, so requests were taking longer, and that's why the tests were failing.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you also face the issues on updating Xcode? Let's say if you migrate from
yeah.
Xcode 10 point something to 11.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did forget to mention that we do have so in the iOS platform team, that's a good thing. We have pretty much a team that's focused on this. So every time there's a new Xcode update, one member of the team will go and update and run the UI test, run the full suite, run all the pipelines, and see if everything is okay. And even in the beta version, because once it releases, every developer and tester is going to update, and stuff will start breaking, you know. So the way we do to try to get ahead of this is getting the beta versions and running the pipelines. And if they work, it's fine. But if they don't, we debug and see what's happening and how we can fix it.
Right, cool, thanks. And maybe the last question. So if you have the test set in XCUITest and let's say Android runs something else, can you marry them together and do some, like common tests, let's say by Appium? So you can use the native tests plus Appium, or you haven't really worked on something like that?
So the question was if I can grab like existing XCUI tests from Xcode using Swift and then run. Sorry, I didn't really understand.
Yeah, so let's say you have, you can write tests in Appium to cover both platforms, like Android and iOS. But in this case, you'll have to use the Appium framework. But do you know if you can include the native tests into Appium? So you can, you run like a shared set of 100 tests plus 100 native tests.
I have heard kind of like a combined thing. Some tests using Appium, so that would include iOS and Android, and some other tests using just native. We don't do that at BNZ, so I can't talk much about that, but I do know some other places did that. Don't know how that went for them though.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I guess it's a better question to if it was an Appium talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Does anyone have any more questions? Cool. Cool, guys. Thanks everyone. And yeah, if you're interested in presenting something as well, you're more than welcome. And yeah, see you on the next meetups. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.